We tripled our blog output. Okay. Now, this is something I think is probably scary for people, but in Q2 compared to Q1 of last year, let me make sure I get the number right. We actually published 3 times more posts. So we tripled the number of blog posts that we published. Now, how did we do that? Very fair question. We empowered our team, and we empowered them without giving them a daunting quota. So now, Annette, who's sitting right over there, she has to write an article a month. Jess, who's up in Boston, has to write 1 article a month. Jenny and Lisa from our high-end agency have to write 1 article a month. John, who I keep yelling at during the show, he has to write 1 article a month. So what we did is we empowered our staff to become contributors. And so now we're actually publishing 4 water coolers a month and 6 blog posts a month. And Jimmy and I didn't have to actually write anything new. We empowered our team, and they loved it because they're only doing 1 a month. So it's not this huge project, but all 6 of them doing 1 plus all 4 of our shows, we're kind of turning into a media company. We've got 2 to 3 new pieces of content every week now. Compared to last year, it was very sporadic. It was more of a spray and pray, or it would be more like, hey, we need some leads. Can you guys do some marketing? I'm sure you've always been there. Like, you don't want to be reactive. You want to be proactive. So part of it was we empowered our team to become authors. Part of it is if you have that, you have to have what's called style guidelines, okay? And what that means is every post has to have a certain word count. Every post has to have certain things it includes. We actually, when somebody submits a post, we make them write the micro copy for social. So like you just wrote an article, write the tweet, write the Facebook post, write the Instagram post. So we're really empowering our team, but then we're giving them guidelines. We're giving them what Jimmy calls big buckets and categories. So we're not just going to let Annette write about anything. It has to fall into these buckets. One of the big buckets is like how to, and then one of the categories is Instagram. So you could say, okay, we're going to do a how-to post about Instagram, or we're going to do a how to do X about YouTube. So by having buckets and categories, it actually makes it very easy for people to choose what their contribution should be. So you figure out what your buckets are, figure out what your categories are, and then you don't mind if your employees choose because they're choosing from pre-approved things. We also now are meeting once a month to come up with all the ideas. Like, it's really hard to build a calendar for a month of marketing if you're not sure what the other things have on it. You need to know that like this comes out and this comes out, because sometimes they work together, right? So like if you have an article on Tuesday that's about one thing, and then you have another article on Thursday, well, those articles might be relevant to each other, and you might want to link them together as an example. Now, the other thing we started using, because we're trying to manage so much chaos, is we really started using Basecamp. And Basecamp is a very simple to do project manager. It's one of the most popular ones in the world. Now, if you don't want to pay for it, that's fine. There's other like project management, checklist management tools. But what I've learned is that if you don't have a checklist, you don't have a chance. If you don't know exactly what you have to do pre-show, during the show, and post-show, it's going to be a problem. And so you've got to have checklists, and you've got to have a mindset that we're going to check everything on this list off. And if we don't, we haven't hit the finish line. Just publishing it is not the checklist. There's a bunch of other stuff. And if you think you're going to remember everything you need to do every time you put out a blog, you're crazy. Use a checklist. Dare to Prepare. There's a great book. You guys should read it. It's called Dare to Prepare. The other thing is like when you put out more content than ever, it becomes more expensive than ever to promote that content, right? So if you're trying to advertise every article and then you increase your output of articles, you just kind of increased your budget for ads, which not everybody needs to do. So one of the things we decided was, you know what? We're going to put our budget into people watching the show. And then on the show, we're going to reference the articles on our site. So it isn't that we're not kind of paying to advertise the content. We're just doing it in a different way. We're actually putting a lot of money into advertising the show. And then while we're on the air, we can recommend content anytime. We're also putting that content into one email a week. So instead of every time we publish, we put out a new email, we do a recap. We call it an irresistible email. And that one email each week has all the new articles plus the new show. Now, and as an example of this, if you guys go to curaytor.com/listings, curaytor.com/listings, we actually have an article with the 19 fastest ways to get listings in 2019. So we did spend money on the water cooler in Q1, but we decided not to have to spend money on every blog post, because through the show and through email, we can still get a huge ROI out of the articles. But the one irresistible email a week is a big part of it. And then mentioning it on the show is a big part of it. Now, here's kind of a minimum version of you guys doing that. Every time you publish an article or every time you get a listing, you do a Facebook Live and you talk about it. Hey, we just wrote a new article. It's about the dangers of selling your home the Silicon Valley way. Like, there's a quote. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Opendoor, but there's a lot of controversy. So we wrote an article for our clients this week about the dangers of selling your home the Silicon Valley way. Like, there's some horror stories. Like, they charged a guy at the closing table $400 because his trash wasn't taken out. They charged a guy at the closing table $200 because one light bulb was broken. They had $8,000 worth of required closing fees and fines to get the deal done, and the guy found out about it an hour before. So there was a quote in this article where they said, the only reason you should use Opendoor is if you absolutely have to. And I know a lot of the people watching this agree. But my point is, when that article comes out, if you're a Curaytor client or if you're publishing your own articles, you can combine Facebook Live and video with articles that you've written. Facebook Live gets the most reach and the most engagement of anything on Facebook. So every time you publish something new and awesome, do a story video talking about it. Do a Facebook Live talking about it. And that would be kind of a way for you guys to get more out of the articles without spending more money, kind of like we did.